This is CBN NewsWatch.
It is Friday, March 19, 2021. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ephraim Graham. I want to begin this half hour with pro-life reaction to the confirmation of one of President Joe Biden's most controversial cabinet nominees. The Senate approved California Attorney General Xavier Becerra as the next Health and Human Services Secretary with a party line vote of 50 Democrats to 49 Republicans. Pro-life leaders reacted swiftly. March for Life President Gian Mancini called it alarming, pointing out his track record of punishing groups like the Little Sisters of the Poor for their faith and journalists who took on Planned Parenthood over selling aborted baby body parts. Pro-life activist Abby Johnson says of his stand that he wants to obliterate those groups of people he disagrees with. Marjorie Dannensfelser of the Susan B. Anthony list says he's infamous in the pro-life movement for attacking policies and conscience rights. Family Research Council's Tony Perkins noted his only real experience is suing entities that aren't pro-abortion enough for his liking. Senator James Lankford agreed on the Senate floor, speaking against Becerra's nomination.
We're used to seeing the leader of Health and Human Services be a physician or a scientist, which would make sense in the time of an enormous global pandemic to have a physician leading Health and Human Services. But he actually nominated someone that his biggest qualification is he is one of the most radical advocates for abortion in the country.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer called the Republican fight against Becerra almost on the verge of ridiculous. A slip by White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki while talking about the situation at the U.S. southern border, finally calling it a crisis.
There have been expectations set outside of, unrelated to any vaccine doses or requests for them, that they would be partners in dealing with the crisis on the border. And there have been requests unrelated that for doses of these vaccines.
Psaki had avoided the word for weeks. The surge at the border, the highest in 2 years. The House passed 2 immigration reform bills on Thursday that would provide a path to citizenship for millions of undocumented immigrants. This includes agricultural workers and those who came to the U.S. as children, known as the Dreamers. While there is bipartisan support for both bills, they face an uphill battle in the Senate. Congresswoman Maria Salazar says both Democrats and Republicans need to come together to solve the crisis.
You bring them out of the shadow and you give them dignity so they can continue raising their American children, they can continue working and paying taxes. And then if they want to become Americans after 10 years, they can do so. Because you know what's so interesting and fascinating, that what I am offering is what the Hispanic community wants.
Salazar says even if they can't agree on everything, at least take it one step at a time. Israelis have a big decision in their upcoming election over whether Bibi Netanyahu should be reelected. Dozens of political parties are competing for control. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell has more on the 4th election in less than 2 years for a nation weary from COVID lockdowns and a battered economy.
In the latest surveys, the top contenders are Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party and Yair Lapid's Yesh Atid.
You have to put someone in charge to revive the Israeli economy. Who are you going to do it? Somebody who's already done it successfully and brought Israel's economy to the best results in our history, or someone like Yair Lapid?
I think it's time for a generational shift in Israel. I think, as I was saying, I'm ready. The party's ready. We have the right plans. We have the right abilities. We have the right experience by now.
For this voting population that's weary of lockdowns, a battered economy, and too many elections, result projections are unclear. According to this poll from Israeli public broadcaster Kan, Likud remains in the lead with 30 seats. Yesh Atid is next with 21, followed by Yamina with 12 and New Hope 11. 7 more parties would likely enter the Knesset with fewer seats, including Defense Minister Benny Gantz's Blue and White Party. Others won't make the threshold.
No one can really forecast what will be the outcome.
In Israel's parliamentary system, citizens vote for a party, not the prime minister. There are 120 seats in the Knesset. And the leader whose party wins the most seats or who is most likely to succeed gets the job of building a coalition. Former Netanyahu advisor Xavier Becerra says there are really only two camps.
We can define these elections that it's a yes Bibi or no Bibi. Yes for Netanyahu or no for Netanyahu.
And while some 70% of the Knesset is right-wing, many on the right oppose him.
Great number of people who despise Netanyahu, don't like Netanyahu for other reasons, because Netanyahu is here for many, many years. Some say too many years, and without even mentioning the fact that he is being tried for corruption.
At Jerusalem's open-air market, the division was clear.
I'm a Likud man. I've known Bibi since he was the United Nations ambassador when I was living in New York, and I remain Likud.
The religious are really ruined by this subject. Until now, I always chose Bibi, all the years, simply. This time, I definitely won't vote for him.
We have a great prime minister. I believe it's time to change.
According to Becerra, more than 40% of those who intend to vote are undecided.
And CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell is here now with more. So, Chris, what is Netanyahu's message to voters as to why they should vote for him?
Well, Ephraim, I think he has three main messages. First of all, he's the vaccinator. He's the one for Israelis, at least many of them feel he saved us from the coronavirus. There's 5 million now vaccinated, and hopefully they can reopen Israel. He promised to do that by Passover, which is in a few days. Second, he's the one who brought peace. He brought the Abraham Accords, and the idea is that he can actually do more. And finally, Ephraim, he's the one with experience. That's what he's saying, that he can confront, keep Israel safe from Iran, that he can deal with the new U.S. administration and all the things they're planning for the Middle East, that he can lead in the uncharted Middle East waters. And Israelis really don't like to have the unknown. So he's saying he's the vaccinator. He's the one with the experiences. He's brought peace with the Arab nations. But also polls show that most Israelis prefer him. But on the other hand, Ephraim, he's also fighting one thing. He's fighting the Bibi fatigue. Many people feel he's been prime minister too long. He's been there the longest serving prime minister in Israel's history. And really some people, Israelis, are just tired of Netanyahu as prime minister. And that's how they'll be voting.
Talking about 4 elections in just the last few years. Why is it so hard to predict the outcome of this election?
It's so hard. It's actually more complicated than a chess game. Some people would say a Rubik's Cube. Even our friend John Waggy, our political analyst, would have a hard time. Part of this is that a lot of people are undecided. Believe it or not, 43% of Israelis are undecided about who they're going to vote for, and they're going to make their decision the day before the election or the day of election. So it's very hard to decide or determine exactly what's going to happen. Also, right now, you have a number of parties that are on what they call the 3.25 threshold, a number which means that if some of these parties don't even qualify to get into the Knesset, it's going to change the calculus and change the math. So whether or not they make the threshold bubble or not is going to have a ripple effect throughout the whole mathematics of the election. So very hard to determine exactly what's going to happen this next Tuesday, but it's going to be very significant one way or the other.
What's coming up this week on Jerusalem Dateline?
Well, Ephraim, we have an amazing story on what's happening in the Dead Sea Scrolls. For the first time in nearly 60 years, they found biblical scrolls from the book of Zechariah and Nahum. And we'll have that as well as another story on the elections as well. And so it's going to be a very exciting Jerusalem Dateline this week.
All right, look forward to that. Thank you so much, Chris. I want to remind you at home that you can always get more news from Israel with the entire team at Jerusalem Dateline. You can find it right here on the CBN News Channel. A California restaurant is operating on generator power, struggling to stay open. The city of Burbank shut off its power after the owners of the Tin Horn Flats chose to remain open despite a court order for their closure. Thorn Flats wrote on Instagram, "This is what it looks like when the government decides you are not an essential business. Power has been turned off. We will not comply. We will be open at 12 noon. Cash only, people." Restaurant owner Lucas Lijan told a local reporter he was not worried about losing his license or incurring fines. "I've got nothing left to lose. I'm opposing tyranny. I'm doing COVID-19 safety protocols." You can find the full story at cbnnews.com. Evangelist Franklin Graham is urging pastors not to discourage church members regarding COVID-19 vaccines. Graham says there are potentially harmful consequences if pastors discourage their members from taking the shot. He also believes if vaccines were available during the time of Jesus, he would have recommended them. Graham also said there's positive signs with the pandemic. He said he is thankful there's a decline in cases and steps are being taken to open the economy, get people back to work, and children back to school. Coming up, new technology to help train police officers for life and death situations in the real world. Stay with us.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Welcome to Studio 5 Uncut. This is our opportunity to share extended conversations with some of the great guests we've had on Studio 5.
You can't go anywhere on the planet and not see the impact of gospel music on popular culture.
Now you're a comedian and a Christian. You know, why is that such a baffle?
Being an artist who is Christian and an artist who is in hip-hop culture, I'm trying to find my own sound.
Studio 5 Uncut. Next.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Police across the nation face intense scrutiny after a number of high-profile shootings in 2020. They often have to make life-altering decisions when it comes to firing their weapons. CBN's Eric Phillips has a look at new technology that can help officers make that split-second decision.
Law enforcement officers face a critical balancing act each shift they work. They strive to follow the law, protect and serve citizens, and then return home safely to their own families at the end of the day. It's an unenviable position of having to make split-second decisions that are sometimes deadly and often second-guessed.
Sir, put the gun down. I don't want to hurt you.
Welcome to the Georgia Public Training Center.
Okay, I'll drop it. Okay, just don't shoot me. Thank you, sir. Go ahead and turn around for me.
Training officers on when and when not to shoot is as real as it gets, thanks to this 300-degree simulator made by Inveris. Chris Wigginton is the center's director.
The simulation can actually have people walk up behind you, beside you, have multiple people inside the scenario. And by using this type of system, it puts a officer that's in training or an advanced officer in the types of situations that we can't recreate in real life without somebody getting hurt or injured.
This facility has been training officers across Georgia in crucial decision-making since the 1980s.
We required every officer in the state to receive additional use of force training and de-escalation training before any other, on a national level or any other state was doing it. So we talk about it in a lecture-based environment. We test them academically on a written test.
And put them through high-tech simulation. Instructors showed us how it works.
Drop the gun.
I'm not going to. During the simulation, an instructor controls each moment of the scenario and can change what happens next with the click of a button. Here is where costly mistakes are revealed before they happen in real life, as I learned firsthand.
While standing in line at your bank, you notice a man acting very strange and nervous.
Hi, Derek. You just shot a guy who had an accidental discharge.
And it all boils down sometimes to an officer making a bad decision. And if an officer makes a bad decision, sometimes someone's life will be lost.
I asked Wigginton about statistics that indicate blacks are more likely to be killed by law enforcement than any others.
I just do not believe that law enforcement sets out to murder people of color. When you talk to officers that are involved in use of force cases, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, it doesn't matter.
Wigginton says the center requires racial sensitivity and diversity training, but some things are out of officers' control.
People want to look at it and say, well, an officer had de-escalation training. Why did this incident end up in a deadly force encounter? Well, sometimes that's not the officer's decision. We always leave out the other part of that conversation, and that's the citizen that's involved in that encounter. The officer can't control what that citizen does.
He says training here is designed to prevent as many deaths as possible.
I don't want to hurt you, sir.
Which he believes is the goal of the vast majority of officers on the streets.
And I think about this just a minute. Do you think there's a police officer that wakes up and puts on their uniform and says, today I'm going to go out and murder someone? I just don't see a police officer that wakes up that wants to get involved in a use of force situation.
Law enforcement officials say it's important to remember the emotional toll officers suffer when they shoot and kill someone. That's something they have to live with for the rest of their lives. And that's when a different kind of training or therapy comes in. Even then, some can't recover and are forced to give up their careers. Eric Phillips, CBN News.
Still ahead, why the Biden administration may embolden China and how it could create major problems for the United States and the world. Stay with us.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Some tense moments as Secretary of State Antony Blinken meets with Chinese diplomats, with both taking aim at the other's policies. CBN's Dale Hurd takes a closer look at how U.S. policy with China will differ under the Biden administration.
The Chinese government has signaled it's happy to see Joe Biden in the White House instead of Donald Trump. But does it see Biden as a pushover because of his administration's many business ties to China? And could that somehow lead to a military miscalculation?
Some experts believe these are dangerous times, with the Chinese government probing to see if Joe Biden will stand up to it.
This is, I think, a far more dangerous time than it was under Trump.
China expert Gordon Chang.
I think they really were afraid of Trump. They were apprehensive because they couldn't predict him. I think that because Trump was unpredictable, that the risk of war was abnormally low. And apparently they don't think very much of Biden. They think that they can push him around.
The Biden administration's ties to China are many. Secretary of State Tony Blinken, Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines, and White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki all worked for a consulting firm called WestExec, which helped businesses and universities get established in China and which on its webpage uses images that suggest access to the White House. Ben Weingarten is with the Claremont Institute.
The myriad cabinet members and other senior administration officials who are going to be responsible for implementing the president's agenda and crafting it with respect to Communist China, who all have dealings at most 2 degrees separated from Chinese Communist Party linked entities and individuals. So the whole administration writ large at the top levels has questions to answer with respect to financial and business dealings with respect to the Chinese Communist Party.
Those dealings are forcing Biden's Asia czar, Kurt Campbell, to agree to recuse himself from conflicts of interest. Hunter Biden made millions from China deals while Dad was vice president in the Obama administration. And there's also Hunter Biden's laptop, with apparent references to Joe Biden as the big guy that showed up repeatedly in leaked business emails. It's led some to ask whether the Chinese government could use what it knows about Hunter's activities in China to push for concessions from the White House.
The conflict of interest appearance alone presents myriad ethics and corruption issues for Joe Biden. And just the fact that it's known that he has those dealings alone is potential leverage against Joe Biden.
While Joe Biden has not yet reversed Donald Trump's Chinese tariffs or travel restrictions, he's already made excuses for China's campaign of genocide against the Muslim Uyghur people. Meanwhile, China has become more aggressive since the Biden inauguration. Incursions into Taiwan's airspace have increased. Chinese aircraft conducted a simulated attack on the USS Theodore Roosevelt carrier group while it was sailing in the South China Sea. And China's foreign minister has publicly warned the Biden White House not to meddle in China's affairs. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Coming up, it wouldn't be March without a little madness in the form of some college basketball playoffs. Stay with us. We'll be back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Welcome to Studio 5 Uncut. This is our opportunity to share extended conversations with some of the great guests we've had on Studio 5.
You can't go anywhere on the planet and not see the impact of gospel music on popular culture.
Now you're a comedian and a Christian. You know, why is that such a baffle?
Being an artist who is Christian and an artist who's in hip-hop culture, I'm trying to find my own sound.
Studio 5 Uncut. Next.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream. The chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities. The chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
And Sports Director Sean Brown to talk a little March Madness. So the games kicked off last night in Indianapolis. Tell us about it.
Hey, good morning, Ephraim. Yes, the first four took place last night. Basically, those teams that are battling for the lowest seeds in the tournament, that 15th and 16th seed teams, Norfolk, Iona, Hartford, and Cleveland have advanced and are now in the round of 64, which starts tonight. So I'm really excited about it, man. NCAA basketball is back, man. Let's go.
Who are the underdogs? That's always a great thing when these colleges make it to the big dance.
Yeah, well, the underdogs can be any team that's below a 10-seeded team. So those 11, 12, 13, all the way down to 15 and 16 seeded teams are underdogs. You take Norfolk State. They get the opportunity now as a 16th seed to play the #1 team in the country. Clearly, they are an underdog. Strong team, but they barely got by Appalachian State last night. And so they're going to have a little bit of difficulty facing the #1 team in the country in Gonzaga. But if they're able to shoot well, which was what I love about March Madness, if you shoot well, if your team shows up and you can bang out those threes, you have a shot. And so it's a long shot, but it is a shot nonetheless. And so underdogs can be any team that's not expected to win. I'm looking at your Norfolk States, really any team that's below Drake, and that's what March Madness is all about, because any team can do it. One loss and you're out. So if you show up and you bang out those threes, you will advance to the next round.
That's good to hear. So what's ahead this weekend?
This weekend, we get into it, man. It's the round of 64. You got teams like, your Michigans, your Ohio States beginning to play. And they get to go, we start the progression from 64 to 32, 16, 8, and all the way down to 4 over the next couple of weeks. And so this week is the round of 64. I'm watching. I've already got my bracket already situated. I think you have until 12 to get your bracket situated. I've got Michigan, Kansas, Ohio State, and wait for it, Illinois in my Final Four. And I've got Michigan playing Ohio State in the championship game. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Well, Michigan and Ohio matchup, always a good one. Are you hearing any faith stories about these players?
Well, you know what? This is what I love about college sports, because the coaches really, they get into the game really just to get a chance to mold men. You look at Virginia's Tony Bennett, you look at Baylor's Scott Drew. They have an opportunity to mentor these young men. And so you want to watch their stories, as honestly, during the tournament, you'll start seeing profiles of these athletes. The Fellowship of Christian Athletes does a fantastic job at colleges just nurturing these young men and these young student athletes. And so I'm watching how these guys are going to progress, as the tournament goes on. But look at your Tony Bennett's, look at your Scott Drews. And you look at a guy like Gonzaga's Corey Kispert, who is a leader on his team. And he motivates those guys, especially when they're down, they're not, playing up to their highest potential. You got those student athletes that yearn or glean from those coaches and start pouring into the rest of the team. And so really, really exciting to see that on the floor. Player gets hurt, all the players drop, begin to pray. It's just a beautiful thing to see.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sean. Much appreciate it.
You got it.
That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, you can always find more news and stories at cbnnews.com and on the CBN News Channel. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you back here Monday.